Part 63. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Amos Yenyu. Chapter 621. The blood pool was surging, and the rich blood seemed to turn into a physical blood hand that grasped the surroundings, revealing the hideous ghost faces below. The spell array covering the entire Eternal Night King city was also spreading under the blessing of the blood sea. The deep red blood sea covered the layers of earth like a wave, and the ground veins trembled. The blood waves swept all the creatures wherever they passed, and the black spells raged in the sky. Even more strangely, the black spell began to emit an invisible smell of decay. Wherever it passed, the body chi of the creatures began to decay at a speed visible to the naked eye, and gradually turned into a pile of dry bones. The mountains and rivers gradually collapsed, and cracks like abysses and canyons appeared. The grass and plants dried up and withered, and the vitality disappeared, turning into black powder and dissipating in the air. All creatures began to age rapidly the moment the deep red blood sea and the black spell passed through. The vitality in the body seemed to be sucked away and quickly shriveled, and finally turned into a pool of dry bones. In the center of the capital, the expanding black magic circle continuously shot out spell-like chains, injecting all the life essence absorbed from the outside world into the blood sea in the center of the array. As the blood continued to flow in, the blood cocoon in the center of the array became more and more red, and the figure inside became clearer. The price was that the entire world and the vitality of the life in it were shrinking and regressing. What is going on? So scary, is the sky collapsing? My hand, my body. The countless creatures below were shocked to see the sky collapse and fall one after another, revealing the empty and endless void above. Some people even felt the abnormality of their bodies, wailing in pain, and soon turned into a pool of bones. High Priest, have you been deceiving me all this time? Yejuyu, who was high on the purple crystal throne, felt that the magic energy in his body was being continuously pulled by the black spell, and looked at the nightmare in the red robe with bloodshot eyes. It was because Nightmare had promised him that if he gathered the power of the 6 reincarnations, he could open the reincarnation gate and save the people, that he raised the power of the Night Clan to help Nightmare, even at the cost of violating the wishes of his ancestors. But everything that happened before his eyes was obviously beyond his expectations, so there was only one reason for this. From the beginning to the end, the high priest of the 3 dynasties had been deceiving him. Unfortunately, no one cares about the demon lord on the throne now, and everyone's eyes are focused on the center of the dark array. As the energy in the blood pool condensed to the peak, the blood-red cocoon suddenly broke open, and a pair of black pupils suddenly opened. Boom! In an instant, the sky was broken, and thunder roared in the broken sky. The angry thunder gradually faded away after a few breaths, and the heavenly punishment that angered the world did not come for a long time. It was as if, even the will of heaven was afraid of the existence that was about to come. No, it's too late, hurry up. Shwekinya and the other Owl Kings looked at each other. They all felt the oppression brought by the strange existence in the center of the array. The throbbing that emerged from the depths of the soul was unique. We must not let the existence inside come out. For a moment, the first generation of Owl Kings exploded the magic energy that was still dissipating in their bodies to the extreme, and launched an attack from all directions in the center of the royal city towards the center of the array. Shwekinya stretched out her hands, lightly pointed her white jade fingers forward, and the Tao of death and life around her turned into a dark purple evil light, like a gust of wind sweeping across the world. The space in the distance flickered frequently, and the already fragile space collapsed inch by inch under the continuous flickering of a white shadow, revealing the endless black void below. Ji Yufeng controlled the evolved black prison space and rushed towards the blood cocoon in the center of the blood pool with a broken void blade in his hand. The crazy sand giant standing in the north of the royal city punched out, trying to blast open the blood cocoon wrapped in an unknown object. At the same time, ghostly demon butterflies, holy angels, and boundless blood shadows all launched a fierce attack on the center of the dark formation at the same time. But surprisingly, the 12 priests surrounding the formation did not stop the desperate attacks of many owl kings. Instead, they chanted obscure spells, and the blood and soul surging in the formation became deeper and deeper, and the boundless blood pool at the center of the formation gradually turned into a black ink color. Seeing that the purple light containing the Deo of life and death was about to fall on the edge of the blood pool at the center of the formation, a strange scene happened. The black spell chains were like giant pythons entwined on the purple beams, and then they devoured the Deo of life and death contained in it like greedy evil spirits, and even the invisible strong wind turned into a wisp of smoke and dissipated. Next, the demon butterflies, angel shadows, and killing blood were all devoured by the black iron chains that seemed to have life. Boom! Suddenly, a huge shadow descended from the sky, crushing the blood cocoon with a mighty force like a falling titan. On the shoulder of this huge yellow sand giant, there stood a tall figure in armor. The first generation of the Corpse Clan Owl King, Zhang Yuan. A white light flashed in the center of the formation, and a cold light slashed at the blood cocoon with a sharp blade in hand. The white death god, Ji Yufeng. The moment the sharp blade touched the surface of the blood cocoon, the blood-colored cocoon made a crisp click sound, and it was like a spider web winding and splitting. The chanting of the 12 priests around him also stopped abruptly. The ceremony was complete. The next moment, Ji Yufeng's cold eyes trembled suddenly, and his figure in the air was also stagnant for a moment. I saw a pair of grey arms stretched out from the blood cocoon and grabbed the void blade in his hand. In his eyes, the arm turned from grey to dark as ink, and the strange thing was that the void blade forged by Ji Yufeng's extraction of spatial power turned into ashes the moment it was grabbed by that hand. Not only that, a decayed breath that made him extremely palpitating continued to extend along the blade and attacked his body. Not good. Ji Yufeng's expression moved slightly, and he shuttled through space almost at the moment when the grey decayed power invaded his body, flashing 1,000 meters away. But then, Zhang Yuan had already controlled the huge crazy sand giant to crush down. Boom! Amidst the flying dust, the 100-meter-high sand giant collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye, like a castle in the air. The surface of the yellow sand giant turned into black gravel, and its movements became extremely slow, like an old film. Zhang Yuan jumped off the giant's shoulder expressionlessly, driving the yellow sand to wrap his right fist and blast downward. But the figure who walked out of the blood cocoon also punched out, with an indescribable smell of decay. The two disproportionate fists, one large and one small, collided with each other, but did not make any sound. The next moment, Zhang Yuan's right arm wrapped in yellow sand was also infected by the decayed breath and began to turn into a strange grey-black color. Zhang Yuan was shocked. He found that he seemed to be tightly grasped by an invisible suction cup and could not escape the erosion of the decayed breath at all. He immediately stretched out his left hand and turned it into a knife, cutting off his right arm from the shoulder, and black and red blood spurted out. Zhang Yuan also took the opportunity to withdraw, and the next moment his right arm also turned into black gravel and shattered. Not only that, the broken part of his arm was also infected by the smell of decay, and it was difficult to grow a new arm. As the ancestor of zombies, he couldn't even regenerate a broken limb. What kind of power is this? As Zhang Yuan was seriously injured, the yellow sand in the sky dissipated, revealing a grey-black figure, with ink-like hair dancing wildly, and a pair of black pupils filled with evil and indifference. The moment they saw this figure, everyone present took a breath of cold air. Because, this figure, whether in terms of body shape or face, is exactly the same as the Lord of Eternal Night in the sky. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 622. That is. How is it possible, that face? At this moment, everyone's eyes turned to the red figure on the top of the giant. Why is the dark figure that walked out of the center of the formation so similar to the first generation of Demon Lord in both size and appearance? After a moment of surprise, Mewtwo came back to his senses. He saw the face in the blood cocoon earlier than others. I don't remember having a twin brother, Mewtwo said in a teasing tone, but at the same time, his eyes were also looking at the figure in the distance that was very similar to him. Although there was also an evil breath in the depths of the eyes on that face, there was no emotion on his face. Even the pupils were dark and deep, as if the darkness emerged from the abyss that had been hidden for a long time. It seems that you can't see his inner thoughts through his face at all. Oh. Seeing that his test had no response, Mewtwo narrowed his eyes, and the blood red in his eyes was rich. For some reason, from the moment that figure appeared, he sensed an inexplicably familiar aura from the other party. The black figure did not stop when he heard his words. His expression was empty, and strange black spells were all over his body. He just kept walking forward. It looked like a puppet without a soul. The atmosphere of the entire royal city became strange and silent at this moment. Only the whistling wind and the heavy breathing of the crowd due to excessive shock remained in the air. After dozens of breaths, someone finally spoke. Mysterious. This was an extremely cold female voice, with a strong and unquestionable meaning. That was the second generation of Demon Lord after the Lord of Eternal Night, who was respected by the world as the Demon Lord of Ghost Demon, Shwekanya. She saw her hands pinching, and the black spell that was wrapped around her body and tried to devour energy was immediately offset by the light ball of life and death. A mark like a ghost fire appeared between her eyebrows, and the surging evil spirit condensed at the same time, passing through the layers of blood sea and directly hitting the black figure. With the same ability to deprive people of life, she thought that her life and death Deo was not inferior to the black spell. As expected, the purple light column released by Shwekanya could really fight against the black spell, and it broke the attacking spell chain in a few collisions. But what was unexpected was that when the life and death Deo light hit the black figure a few meters away, a gray-black glimmer flashed around the black figure again. Immediately, Shwekanya's all-out attack disappeared without a trace like a drop in the ocean. It really disappeared without a sign. How is it possible? Drops of crystal sweat overflowed from Shwekanya's smooth forehead, and the magic energy in her body was still being absorbed and withdrawn by the surrounding environment. The previous attack had made her try her best and even mobilized part of her origin. But even such a powerful attack from the Deyuan realm couldn't break the defense of the Black Shadow. Looking at this face that was exactly the same as her teacher, Shwekanya fell into a trance for the first time. After the Black Shadow absorbed Shwekanya's Deo of life and death, the aura around it became more and more terrifying, and it walked out step by step from the center of the formation. The dark eyes seemed like an endless abyss, swallowing up everything it saw. Master Demon Lord Luo Ziyuan and others didn't expect that even Shwekanya's Deo of life and death couldn't do anything to this Black Shadow. They were shocked and attacked the walking Black Shadow together. However, as before, all the fierce attacks that seemed to be a landslide were like a drop in the ocean the moment they approached the Black Shadow, and the magic energy was swallowed up by the gray-black light and disappeared. Even the ferocious Night Clan army began to rot and fall off strangely when they were several kilometers away from the Black Shadow, turning into a pool of blood and merging into the blood pool. How is it possible? Everyone's expression became horrified at this moment. They had never seen such a terrifying existence, and it had disintegrated all their offensives before they even started. Everyone retreat. At this time, a magnetic but unquestionable voice sounded from everyone's ears. Then, an inexplicable heat dispelled the chill in their hearts. Everyone looked up at the sky and saw a blood-red figure standing in the air, with overlapping blood moons reflected in his eyes, and a dark red boundless sun condensed above his head, instantly brightening the sky, like Amaterasu. The next moment, the blazing sun wrapped in black flames had already fallen with a bang, like a meteorite falling from the sky, with a mighty flame, as if it was going to dissolve the heaven and earth. Amaterasu Sudanichi blasted towards the black shadow entangled by the black spell in the formation, and the black spell chains broke inch by inch wherever it passed. When it descended on the top of the black shadow, the gray-black barrier appeared, and the dark halo was swallowing and spitting, as if it wanted to absorb the terrifying energy in the sun. But Amaterasu Sudanichi, which contained terrifying power, instantly passed through the light and dark cover, and blasted on the black shadow like a meteor chasing the sun. In an instant, the strong and hot energy fluctuations were like waves, rolling towards the earth, rushing into everyone's heart. What was terrifying was that the moment the black shadow touched the black flame sun, its body suddenly turned dark red. From a distance, the black shadow's body looked like gushing magma, with dark red cracks all over his body, and the terrifying black flame sun was boiling in his body. This black shadow actually absorbed the black flame fire. After a brief moment, the black shadow swelled, and the dark red color on its body faded, and it turned into a gray-black color again. Miuchiu felt something in his heart, and his eyes flashed, and the 6 round jades in his eyes began to spin wildly. Huh! The red flames roared, and a huge flame demon giant emerged from behind him. Half of his body was a white bone shura wrapped in black flames, and the other half was the incarnation of a god intertwined with red flames. The real body of the flame demon took a step forward, and the shattered sky was suddenly illuminated with a fiery red. The broken void began to intensify and dense cracks appeared. The ground under his feet collapsed layer by layer, and boiling hot magma emerged from the cracks in the abyss. However, strangely, at the moment when the flame demon's true body appeared, the black shadow walking in the spell formation suddenly raised its head, and a beam of light flashed in its dark eyes, and the shadow under it continued to spread with black blood. Boom! The black blood turned into boiling flames, and a black monster that was exactly the same as the flame demon giant rose from the ground surrounded by countless black blood, roaring at the flame demon's true body where Miuchiu was. Roar! The 2 giants roared in the air, the sound was like thunder, and the flames around them were surging and majestic, intertwining and devouring each other, and the sky was illuminated in a dark red. Miuchiu stood in the air above the flame demon's true body, staring at the black shadow opposite him that was exactly the same as himself. The expressionless face of the other party made people feel as if they were trapped in it at a glance. Miuchiu narrowed his eyes, and he felt a familiar breath on the other party's body. It was the energy fluctuation of swallowing. He, don't you understand? The clown's wild laughter echoed over the capital. Everything in this world was born for my lord. Even you, Lord of Eternal Night, you are a part of my Lord. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 623. The dome was dark, and countless dark space fragments fell from the sky, revealing the empty and endless void below. Black spell chains spread between heaven and earth like ghosts, taking away all the vitality of this world. Don't you understand? You were born for my lord. The clown's playful voice echoed in this world, and his tone was filled with an inexplicable nobility and pride. In a dark world, a giant with red flames burning all over his body rose from the ground, bringing a faint candle light to the creatures of this world. The brocade-like red hair fluttered in the wind, and a beam of light flashed in a pair of strange red eyes. Miuchiu stood on the head of the flame demon's real body, looking at the face in front of him that was exactly the same as his own, thinking. According to what the white-robed man said, the whole world they were in was a void barrier that sealed the ancient evil. With the 8 sources of heaven and earth as locks, one plane as the boundary, the immortal sacrifice formation trapped his body, and the gate of reincarnation locked his soul. Its name is burial. Miuchiu murmured, and a faint light flashed in his evil and weird blood eyes. As Mewtwo blurted out, the black shadow opposite seemed to have sensed something, and suddenly raised his head, and two strange faint lights burst out of his dark eyes. Roar! The black shadow roared, and the black giant under him also roared in unison. The smell of decay began to spread, and the ground under his feet collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Mewtwo's pupils shrank slightly, and 6 circling megatama were reflected in his deep red blood eyes, like 2 blood moons that saw through everything. The next moment, the fire demon giant under him spewed out a fierce red flame, like a lava dragon with a winding and mighty breath bombarding the opposite side. The black shadow giant was not to be outdone. The countless black spells that permeated the sky and the earth condensed into a dark pillar of light, which collided with the dark red dragon coming towards them. In an instant, the sky suddenly changed, and the whole world was divided into black and red. Wherever the light reached, it turned into a piece of decay. Not good. Shwekinya's eyes trembled, and her jade fingers danced. The dark purple life and death Taoism was exerted to the extreme at this moment, covering the surrounding Night Tribe army. Wherever the majestic energy fluctuations reached, cracks appeared on the dark purple barrier, barely protecting the people inside. The people covered by the life and death Taoism like an inverted bowl were horrified, and the scene before them seemed like a miracle to them. However, the next second, they saw the 2 giant bodies standing between heaven and earth began to expand rapidly. The 2 bodies mixed with black spells and blood-red silk continued to rise, hundreds of meters, kilometers, thousands of meters, even 10,000 meters, reaching the sky. They couldn't tell how far these 2 terrifying beings had grown, because it was impossible to explore the existence of these 2 beings with the naked eye. Then, the 2 indescribable giants controlled their huge bodies to collide with each other. There were no fancy skills, just like the fight between children, the flesh intertwined by fire and darkness collided violently, and the people below could only see 2 huge figures that kept extinguishing but rekindled. But every collision at an altitude of 10,000 meters can cause drastic changes in this world. The red flames fell from the sky, like falling meteors and meteorites, and fell deep underground like a volcanic eruption and lava bursting. The wind was surging, and the gray-black mist was steaming and overflowing. Under the sweep of the black spell, it was like a soul-seeking evil ghost, and everything was rotten and the living beings were charred wherever it passed. The sky collapsed faster under the aftermath of the battle between the 2 huge giants, and thunder-like explosions were heard from time to time. The shattered endless void was like a hole in the abyss, trying to crush and devour the world without protection. With Zhongzhou as the center, the strange phenomena between heaven and earth became more and more intense, and countless creatures and alien races fled in all directions under the terrifying vision, as if it was the end of the world. Finally, the battle on the sky lasted for an unknown period of time. The red flames gradually extinguished under the erosion of darkness, and the black shadows gradually dissipated under the burning of the flames. Mewtwo, wearing the heavy armor of the Candle Dragon, stood in the air. The real body of the flame demon under his feet rotted under the erosion of the black spell, revealing the eerie white bones below. He raised his eyes and looked, and the black shadow opposite was also burned by the flames. Tianlai Novel Network. This time, the 2 sides were evenly matched. No, that's not right. Feeling the surging decay between heaven and earth, Mewtwo's eyes were a little solemn. The endless blood soul turned into black spells and continued to gather towards the black shadow, and the energy emanating from the latter became more and more magnificent. This black shadow is still getting stronger. At this moment, a brilliant white light suddenly burst out between heaven and earth, like a candle light blooming in the darkness, illuminating the sky that was on the verge of breaking. What is this? All the creatures illuminated by this white rainbow light felt that the black spell that eroded their bodies was slowly dispelling, and they subconsciously looked up. In the center of the blood pool formation, on the altar that originally belonged to the eternal Night Royal family, a petite figure floated into the air wrapped in a white rainbow light. When he saw the existence in the white light clearly, Mu Chiu's expression changed, and he murmured, "Xiao Xiao." In the dark, he seemed to look into a pair of indifferent eyes in the white light, and his expression fell into a moment of trance. Swish. Suddenly, the scene in front of Mu Chiu changed again. The ruined world was gone, replaced by a vast expanse of unknown space. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully checking in at the Eternal Night Capital and unlocking the reward. The familiar mechanical sound of the system sounded in Mu Chiu's ears. He hadn't heard the sound for a long time. But unlike before, this time the sound of the system came from far away, and the mechanical sound gradually became ethereal when it reached his ears. Gradually, what reached his ears was no longer a cold electronic sound, but a female voice with indifference. As if he had noticed something, Mu Chiu suddenly turned around and saw a slender figure wrapped in a white robe standing at the end of his sight. This time, he finally saw the face under the white robe clearly. It was a beautiful and quiet female face with an unchanging indifference expression on her face, but the outline between her eyebrows made Mu Chiu very familiar. "Xiao Xiao, it's you." With a helpless smile on his face, Mu Chiu finally recognized the identity of the mysterious man in white robes. It was Qi Xiao Xiao, the disciple he accepted in the world 1,000 years later. What made him realize even more was that the system voice that gradually became clearer in his ears was exactly the same as Qi Xiaoxiu's ethereal voice. Mu Chiu raised his head and looked into Qi Xiaoxiu's indifferent starry eyes, and said slowly, "Should I call you my disciple now, or?" The Great World Sign-In System. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 624. You have finally come this far. An ethereal and indifferent voice sounded in his ears, and his cold tone was as indifferent as a god. Mu Chiu looked up and saw the fair and delicate face under the white robe. The familiar outline between the eyebrows reminded him of that quirky orc girl. "I traveled to this world, and even traveled through time and space for thousands of years. Was this all your plan?" He will not forget that before he obtained the so-called sign-in system, he was drawn by a mysterious force to the end of the world and became the Lord of Fire Demon who dominated the world. It was also after that, under the guidance of the so-called system, that he arrived at each mission location, contended with the heterogeneous religion, until he reached the pinnacle of the end of the world. Mu Chiu suddenly thought of something, raised her head, and looked at the ethereal eyes under the white robe with her strange blood eyes. "The ultimate purpose of leading me to the end of the world is to fight against the heterogeneous religion and help you eradicate the heterogeneous religion. From beginning to end, there is no such thing as a system. No, to be precise, the system that issued him the check-in task was the woman in white in front of him. You already have the answer in your mind, don't you?" The woman in white robe was suspended in mid-air, casting her gaze towards Mu Chiu, her voice as empty and indifferent as ever. Mu Chiu raised the corners of her mouth and spread her hands. "If all this is your plan, then I'm sorry, I hate being plotted by others, even if you are doing it for the sake of all sentient beings." For him, grand ambitions such as saving the world are not of interest to him. What is the outcome of all living beings? What does it matter to him? "No, you won't give up." The woman in white robe slowly shook her head. As she raised her hand, the surrounding white space gradually turned into a transparent light curtain. And the scene presented inside was a scene of the world collapsing, visions appearing frequently, and all life being devastated. Because, all this is not only to save the common people, but also to save you. The red lips of the woman in white opened slightly, as if murmuring to herself. In ancient times, when the immortals and demons fell, a supreme monster was born who fed on the origin of heaven and earth and devoured all things. The world called it burial. The immortals and gods of all realms could not bear their worries, so they mobilized the mighty power of tens of millions of realms and listed the forbidden laws of all phenomena to seal the prison. They used the 8 sources of heaven and earth as locks and one plane as the boundary. The great formation of sacrifices to immortals trapped their shapes and locked the door of reincarnation. Its soul is imprisoned in its true body. When the forbidden formation was about to be completed, Burial used the technique of feathering thousands of souls, scattering thousands of souls into 6 reincarnations. After countless reincarnations, they reversed death and transformed into reincarnation. After the words fell, the woman in white robe stared at Mu Chiu's face and spoke solemnly. And you are one of the thousands of souls that have been differentiated by Burial, carrying the source of its devouring power. Mu Chiu's pupils shrank suddenly, and she suddenly recalled the dark figure that walked out of the immortal sacrifice formation. That evil and evil face was exactly the same as hers. And the other party exuded a devouring aura that was particularly familiar to him. From all this, it is not difficult to see that what the woman in white robe said is true. Is he really just a ray of soul separated from Burial's body? The look in Mu Chiu's eyes was dark and unclear. After a few breaths, she slowly raised her head, her eyes burning like a burning fire. So what, even if I am one of the souls of buried, after countless reincarnations, I will still be the only one in the world. After the words fell, Mu Chiu exuded an unparalleled domineering power, and the terrifying coercive momentum caused the surrounding space to faintly fluctuate. The royal way is the most hegemonic way in the world, adhering to the unrivaled meaning of the way. Even if he was just a ray of soul in his previous life, he can now take his place and become the supreme god who makes all worlds tremble. Regarding Mu Chiu's reaction, the woman in white robe was not surprised at all, but said quietly, "Tianlai novel network. Burial's true body has been released from the seal. If the body without a soul is left alone, it will unconsciously continue to absorb the origin of heaven and earth until the world here withers and destroys. At that time, the unconscious body will gain the power to transcend this reincarnation and lead thousands of souls to reunite and become a complete individual." Mu Chiu shook her head and laughed. "It seems that you are plotting something. If he waits for the body outside to absorb the origin of heaven and earth of the entire world and gather the soul lost in reincarnation, then he will cease to exist. So, why did you choose me?" Mu Chiu looked at the woman in white robe. Her delicate face always had an indifferent expression. Thousands of souls have been thrown into the 6 realms of reincarnation and reincarnated for eternity, and among them there must be many talented people. Why did the woman in white robe choose herself, who was ordinary at that time? You are the only one among the individuals with swallowing divinity who has the potential to be king. The woman in white robe looked at Mu Chiu, said something ambiguous, and then said, "If you want to prevent Burial from resurrecting, you can only reseal the body, collect the souls scattered across the 1,000 planes, and replace them as new individuals. As soon as the woman in white robe finished speaking, the surrounding white space picture changed again. The vast white space suddenly turned into a vast expanse of blue starry sky. In the starry sky, slender figures with the same appearance as Mu Chiu emerged. These figures have different clothes and different expressions, and the plane space they are in is also shrouded in a layer of white mist barrier. Some sit high on the throne and rule a kingdom, with a solemn and dignified look, overlooking all living beings. Some wear gorgeous heavy armor, lead their army to command the battlefield, and are covered in blood like a god of war. There are also practitioners wearing white robes standing on a cliff, practicing Taoism, researchers in white coats, and ordinary people like him in his previous life. Mu Chiu knew that these were all individuals of the souls that were thrown into reincarnation and located in other planes. Suddenly, as if he had noticed something, Mu Chiu turned his head and looked in a certain direction. In the starry sea closest to him, a slender and tall mysterious figure stood in the white mist. That figure was also wearing a windbreaker robe, with purple ghost fire intertwined all over his body, holding a huge black sickle on his back, and a black iron chain wrapped around his waist. A pair of dark purple pupils looked at him, and the face that was exactly the same as his was a cold look. A piece of silver-white long hair fluttered like a waterfall, and the figure just stared at him from a distance, as if they had crossed countless time and space. Purple eyes and silver hair, red hair and blood eyes. At a certain moment, the figures of the two gradually overlapped. Miu felt something in his heart, watching the mysterious figure gradually disappear in the white mist, with a curve at the corner of his mouth, and retracted his gaze. The vast starry sky around him turned into an illusory bubble and dissipated, and he looked at the white-robed woman again. "So, what exactly are you?" The white-robed woman nodded gently, and the white space turned into a transparent light curtain, and the world outside, which was like the end of the world, reappeared. All living beings trembled humbly in front of this hellish scene, but there was only one place where strangely no world phenomena occurred. That was the last habitat of the human race in the world, and it was also a holy place called the ancestral land by humans Yuhe. The calm voice of the woman in white robe came. "The spirit has entered my flesh and blood, and I have become a human god. I am the gatherer of spirituality, the controller of the world's rules, and the executor of order. The way of the human world. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord." Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 625. Human Path. After the white-robed woman said these three words, a dazzling purple light suddenly burst out from Miu's chest, and a square box with blood-colored runes carved on it suddenly floated in the air. The Box of Ghosts. After containing the power of the hungry ghost path and the animal path, the Box of Ghosts has a clear perception of the power of the six paths. It can even be said that the Box of Ghosts has been gradually built into a divine artifact that contains the power of the six paths. So that's it, the carrier of the world's order and wisdom. Miu was not surprised by the identity of the white-robed woman. Staring at the delicate and exquisite face, Miu sighed secretly. The real power of the six paths has no entity, and Qi Xiao is just a container that carries the human path because of her special physique. Man is the spirit of all things, and is also the creator of social order and rules. The human path is the collection of all wisdom in the world, and naturally favors humans, the most intelligent race of all things. Or, the white-robed woman transformed by the human Dao made him travel back to 1,000 years later, perhaps with the idea of saving mankind. Perhaps it was because he changed too many causes and conditions after traveling to the end of the world, so he was forced to travel through time and space again to correct the causes and conditions. A beam of light flashed in his strange blood-red eyes, and he looked up at the white-robed woman in front of him and said teasingly, "Then, let me see what my last sign-in reward is." The dark white space seemed to be swirling like a stream, and the white figure gradually disappeared in Miu's eyes, and his vision gradually became clear from blurry. The ethereal voice of the system sounded in Miu's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully checking in at the Eternal Night Capital and unlocking the reward. The source of the six paths. Indistinctly, Miu saw the ancient door surrounded by white mist again. Unlike before, the six chains wrapped around the door slowly loosened at this moment, and the ancient door opened, getting closer and closer in his eyes. Outside, the sky was dark, thunder and rain intertwined, and all kinds of unusual phenomena in the world intensified in all continents. Fire rain fell from the sky, and countless meteorites wrapped in flames fell from the sky like a volcanic eruption, and large buildings collapsed under the falling of flint. Tornadoes rose up in the valley out of thin air, and the violent storm tore the roots of the surrounding plants and lifted the ground. In an instant, the dense jungle turned into a wasteland. A large amount of cold air gushed out of the polar cave, and the condensed ice spread in all directions like a wave. There were continuous space shatters above the sky, revealing the empty and endless void below, and the creatures of all races on the ground were swept into the void. The sky that flickered was like a huge monster opening its hideous eyes to overlook the world. The earth cracked, floods surged, the swamps surged, thunder roared, and the strange beasts in the wilderness also felt the crisis of heaven and earth and began to flee subconsciously. And it was the source of all these strange phenomena, the capital of the eternal night in the central continent, which had long been reduced to ruins. One by one, the decayed bodies turned into ashes and dissipated, and the desperate souls struggled and roared in the gushing sea of blood. The black spells flying all over the sky were like the butcher knife of the god of death, swaying the souls of every living being. www. A gray-black figure walked in the ruins of the sea of blood, and black curses and bloody souls kept wandering around his body. That figure was like a sign of ominousness and death, announcing the horn of doomsday to the whole world. Damn it, he can't continue. Shwekinya stood in the air, her eyebrows were furrowed, and her face was solemn. As a rare Daiyuan-level powerhouse in the world, she had a particularly strong sense of the origin of heaven and earth. She could clearly feel the life in this world was rapidly draining away. If this continued, the whole world and all the creatures in it would perish. At the edge of the sea of blood, Luo Ziyuan, riding a skeleton warhorse, waved the thunder sword and commanded the Night Clan army to attack the walking black shadow. However, whether it was the amazing magic attack or the sword and axe of the powerful magic weapon, or the continuous arrows, they were useless to the black shadow. All the attacks were swallowed up by a gray-black light shield the moment they approached the black shadow. The strange energy light shield was like a bottomless abyss, swallowing up all the living energy from the outside world. The thousands of troops composed of the Night Clan army rushed towards the black shadow in unison, and in an instant, they swallowed up the black shadow and the sea of blood. But in the next second, their bodies were infected by the black spell, turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. A white figure flashed frequently in the void, breaking through layers of space. Ji Yufeng's hands turned into claws, tearing out sharp space blades, and projecting them like javelins. The surrounding space was like rolling up raging waves, and the fluctuations were violent. But even the sharpest space blades in the world lost their all-pervasive characteristics when facing the gray-black light shield, and they were decayed into nothingness by the dark energy before they could get close. Shwekinya bit her lower lip tightly, and just as she was about to squeeze out the few life and death sources in her body, a strong wind suddenly surged behind her. Shwekinya, who felt something in her heart, flashed in the air, and several thin bloodlines behind her cut through the sky, rolling up waves. She turned around and looked, and in the sky not far behind her, there were dozens of terrifying figures in red robes. 12 sacrificial immortals. The nightmare that had just launched the sneak attack let out a creepy and crazy laugh. How can you disturb our respected master from eating? Asshole. Without time to give more orders, Shwekinya was forced to lead a group of first-generation Aral kings to fight against the alien envoys. Behind the Night Clan army, Yefanyan stood pale among a group of human reinforcements, looking at the ruins around her, and looking up was the sky that was constantly breaking and getting darker. She subconsciously clenched the jade pendant hanging on her chest, but heard a crisp sound. The completely dim jade pendant was completely shattered as soon as she exerted a little force. Yefanyan's eyes were blurred for a moment, and then her clear eyes became firm. She looked up at the sky, as if she had made some secret decision. At the same time, the Daiyuan-level battle in the sky became more intense, and waves of terrifying pressure pressed down, but were absorbed by the black spell in the blink of an eye. It seems that your Lord of Eternal Night has abandoned you. Why not give up resistance and return to the arms of our Lord? The clown escaped from the barrier of the space blade and the sandstorm cage, and his body turned into a bloodline and flashed into the air. Although one of his arms was torn off by the space blade, the clown's face was still full of crazy smiles. But in the next moment, the smile on the clown's face solidified. Oh, really? I don't remember raising such a talkative bug at home. The magnetic voice came from the other side, and the clown's head also drew a bloodline from the center of his eyebrows. The whole body was split into two halves. Behind the split body, a domineering figure wearing dark red armor stood in the air, with such a familiar smile in his evil eyes, looking down on the world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world. Start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 626. A line of blood split the clown's body in two from the center of his eyebrows, and there was still a look of fear and horror on the latter's face. Blood sprayed into the sky, and the clown's broken body struggled and twitched crazily, constantly changing between flesh, and threads. But as if under some kind of curse, the body withered very quickly, and eventually withered into ashes. Everyone who was still in the fierce battle noticed it and turned around to look, and saw a dark red figure wearing candle dragon light armor that seemed to step through the void and shuttle from the other side of the void. Lord Demon Lord. Master. Muchu. Muchu stood in the sky, a pair of evil blood pupils seeming to reflect a circling blood moon, shrouding all the creatures below. Staring at the 12 priests including Nightmare below, the corners of Muchu's mouth slightly raised. Looks like I haven't missed the last show yet. Seeing Muchu again, the eyes under Nightmare's white mask were a little uncertain, and he comforted in a low voice. Lord of Eternal Night, you are one of my lord's thousands of souls, with the same origin. Now that your true body has awakened, why do you still have to fight with each other? How about joining forces with my lord, participating in the origin of the Great Road, seizing the fortune of the world, embracing the time of heaven and earth, replacing the destiny of all realms, and becoming the master of the Great Road that is unique in all time? Seeing the sincere look in Nightmare's eyes, Muchu sneered. I didn't expect that you, a foreign creature, have a way of talking about words, but since you also said that there is no one in the world. He glanced at the black figure below that was the same as himself, his eyes flashed, and he said sternly. Then why don't I be the one and only in eternity? As soon as he finished speaking, a mighty thunder suddenly sounded in the dull sky above his head, and there seemed to be a bloody one eye opening in the sky, replacing the original eye of heaven. The black figure below, who was still walking slowly in the sea of blood, felt something. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the blood pupil hanging in the sky, and his facial features roared towards it ferociously. The black spells that emerged from the sky and the earth began to violently run wild, traveling through everything, harvesting vitality at a speed visible to the naked eye, causing all things to decay. Muchu stood in the sky, and the black flames rolled up around her body burned the corroded black mantra. The monster box on the chest vibrated violently, bursting out with rich blood light, reflecting in all directions. The next moment, two red and blue chains shot out from the blood pupils engraved on the monster's box, leading to two ancient doors standing in the air, releasing an extremely terrifying and powerful aura, which only made people want to look at it. Deep in it. Immediately afterwards, evil auras surged somewhere in the capital of the Evernight King, and a black figure wearing heavy armor was wrapped in the billowing evil aura. The Night Evil Owl King mobilized all the magic energy in his body and used the secret method of escape to escape from the pursuit of the Sea of Blood. Today, his armor is in tatters and scarred, and his face is pale with fear that has not faded away. The battle at the altar had exceeded his imagination. Now he just wanted to escape from this area as soon as possible, stay away from the capital of Evernight, and escape from the central continent. But before he could escape, his figure suddenly froze uncontrollably, as if he was inspired by some kind of power, and a purple glow gathered in his eyes. No, no. He murmured weakly and looked horrified, feeling that the power accumulated in his body was being continuously drained away. Strange purple light surged out of the 7 orifices of the Night Fury King, converging into a beam of light and rushing toward the center of the altar. Yejuyo, the ninth-generation demon lord who sat high on the amethyst throne, stared at the dark red figure in the sky with deep eyes. Feeling the supreme royal power unconsciously exuding from the other party, and seeing that my own royal power was so weak in the eyes of the other party, I sighed quietly. Ancestor, I am not as good as you. After saying this, Yejuyo's upright body suddenly slumped down. His body seemed to be dozens of years older, with dry hair and wrinkled skin. At the same time, Yejuyo also gathered a group of primitive light beams and shot towards the dark red figure under the distant sky. Quickly, protect the Holy Sun. This power. Among the human race, Yefanyan was surrounded by many humans, and her body began to emit light golden fluorescence involuntarily. Having made some kind of determination in her heart, Yefanyan bit her lower lip and put her hands together in front of her chest in a prayer gesture. We must win. 3 color light groups circled around the purple box suspended in mid-air, and thick chains shot out from it in an instant. Muchu stretched out her hand, the 5 paths exuded a primitive atmosphere, and the sources of the 6 paths of different colors began to rotate alternately. Dots of white light gathered under the dark sky, gradually forming a hazy shadow of a woman. The woman in white nodded slightly to Muchu, and immediately the light spots on her body turned into a white ball of light, and her body shrank rapidly, turning into a petite girl with animal ears and slowly floating down. How is it possible that you have gathered the power of 6 paths? Feeling the aura that made him extremely palpitating, Nightmare's pupils trembled and his body trembled. No one knows better than him how difficult it is to collect the source of the 6 paths, even if it took the heterogeneous religion thousands of years to find the inheritance of the Hell path and the Azura path. The blood in Muchu's eyes was deep and cold, like a god who had descended from the world. A woman's soft singing voice could be heard faintly in the distance, like the Sanskrit sound of surrender from heaven and earth. The next moment, Muchu raised his right arm, and the monster box suspended in the air was like a millstone reflecting 6 groups of light that illuminated the world. Boom! Muchu was surrounded by black flames. In an instant, an infinitely tall flame demon giant rose from the ground under the swirling black flames. The black and red wings stretched out behind him, and 6 megatama wheels circled between his pupils, like a giant from the ancient times. Muchu stood on top of the fire demon giant, shouted loudly, and drove the 6 light groups downwards with the demon box. The source of the 6 paths, which was about the size of a millstone, continued to expand as it moved downwards, and in the blink of an eye it turned into 6 huge doors with different colors and simple and powerful auras. The 6 gates framed the black shadow below together with the boundless sea of blood, and countless chains shot out from the 6 gates. The chains easily penetrated the gray-black barrier and tightly bound the true shadow named Burial. The black shadow felt the threat from the origin of the 6 paths, and roared subconsciously, but no matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape the shackles of the 6 paths. 6 paths of reincarnation prison. Muchu gave an order, a cold voice mixed with boundless royal power, and the 6 huge gates trembled one after another. The 6 gates of the hungry ghost realm, the animal realm, the god realm, the Shura realm, the hell realm, and finally the human realm are shrouded in mist. A large number of obscure runes stretched out from the door, pulling the chains to the boundless sea of blood at the feet of the black shadow and consuming them together. At the same time, the doors belonging to the realm of hungry ghosts and beasts glowed brightly, and a large number of branch chains were separated to bind the red-robed emissaries including Nightmare, as if they wanted to drag them into the endless reincarnation. No, don't. The eyes of the 12 priests struggled and twitched in fear, and even the phantom in the center of the sea of blood screamed unconsciously. Today, in the name of Yanjai, I open up the destiny of the Yanjai clan, banish evil spirits and rebels from the endless hardships of reincarnation, return the living to their spirits, transform the dead into evil spirits, safeguard the peace of heaven and earth, and suppress the boundless territory of this region. His eyes swept across the countless races below, and his tone was solemn and unquestionable, making people unconsciously want to surrender after hearing it. The 8 desolate worlds are all controlled by me, Yongye, and all the tribes in the territory are the living beings of this world. After today, the name of this realm is Demon Realm. I shall be the lord of the demon realm. Muchu looked up at the sky, and the entire sky turned into blood. A round of blood pupils replaced the moon hanging in the sky, and the heaven was silent. After saying this, Muchu raised her hand to cut through the void in front of her, and a dark red sword with red flames appeared out of the sky. The runes floating on the sword implied the meaning of the 6 paths, and also contained the unrivaled supreme power of the king. Royal Night Sword. Today I use the Night Sword to suppress evil and rebellion, sacrifice to the sky, replace the 8 sources of heaven and earth, and lock the 6 paths of reincarnation. The fire demon giant took over the royal night sword that inherited the ancient origin. With a roar, he inserted the long sword into the blood sea formation surrounded by 6 gates below. In an instant, the black shadow let out a shrill roar, and the 6 gates were activated by the royal night sword, causing the extended iron chain to shrink extremely, and all the black spells spreading across the world were absorbed into the 6 gates. Nightmare, who was entangled and dragged by 6 chains, took a deep look at Muchu, but her tone became extraordinarily calm, and she expressed her doubts. Our 10,000 years of planning have been in vain, but, Lord of Eternal Night, do you really want to give up your immortality and incarnate as the 6 paths to guard this world? I'm not that noble. Muchu smiled and said, what happens in this world has nothing to do with me. That is something for future generations to think about. I have given a blessing to the world, and I will not leave this world in vain. Aha! A flash of crimson blood filled the world, erasing and destroying all evil and filth. Everyone was stung by the dazzling blood light and couldn't open their eyes. After a few breaths, the blood light subsided and they opened their eyes. Looking up, there was only the red figure standing in the air between the sky and the earth, with blood-red hair flying, and the demonic face calm and indifferent under the blood-red eyes, like a king overlooking his territory. In front of the red figure, a suspended purple box trembled slightly. 1 year later, the rebuilt royal night capital. The former royal city of Central Continent has been reduced to thousands of miles of scorched earth in the Altar War, and has become a restricted area for life due to the influence of the Black Spell and the source of the 6 paths. With the help of all the clans, the royal capital of the Yonjai clan was quickly built. The location is located in the former ancestral land of the human race, Yuhe. In a sky-high castle standing in the center of Jade Sea King City. Yefanyan was wearing a light gauze, holding her chin with her hands, bending over and looking at the distant scene, lost in thought. It has really become a demonic realm. Looking at the mixed figures of humans and various strange races on the street not far away, as well as the various demonic-style buildings, Yefanyan said with emotion. Suddenly, she felt a weight on her back, and then a small hand began to roam around her chest. Yefanyan's face suddenly turned red, she turned around shyly and said angrily. Dyer, what are you doing? The girl in the red dress stood up from behind Yefanyan and made a playful face. Let me see what kind of figure it is that makes my brother fascinated. After saying that, she pouted again, looked at the flat plate on her chest, and muttered. It's not that big. You, what are you talking about? Yefanyan covered her chest with a blushing face. Just as she was about to say something, several figures walked out of the castle. Xiao Hanyan, who was wearing a white military uniform, and Shuekanya, who was wearing a purple long gauze, walked slowly. The former covered her mouth and smiled. Fanyan looks very beautiful in this dress. The gauze dress Yefanyan was wearing was crystal white, with a slender waist and white skirt. It was dotted with crystals and star-shaped patterns. It looked gorgeous and elegant, showing Yefanyan's pretty and delicate face perfectly. This was a white tube-top wedding dress. At this moment, a fragrant breeze swept over, and a woman wearing a classical long skirt and a charming posture came from the other side. Sister Fanyan looks like a fairy in the painting when she wears this wedding dress. No wonder Lord Muchu is so fascinated by her. The woman blinked her charming phoenix eyes, and her tone was inevitably a little sour. Really, Lord Muchu hasn't bought a wedding dress for me yet. It's obviously Lord Muchu's first time, but he wants to hold a wedding for Sister Fanyan first. Xiao Hanyan looked at Lu Qianqian and reminded her. You are afraid that your position will be shaken, so let the demon lord hold a wedding for you once. Shueqianya smiled and said nothing. Don't come on. Lu Qianqian rolled her eyes. Don't think I don't know. You went to the most luxurious wedding dress shop in the royal city a few days ago to try on wedding dresses. Don't think about grabbing the position of the queen before me. After being exposed by Lu Qianqian, Xiao Hanyan and Shueqianya couldn't help showing embarrassment on their faces. Dyer, who was wearing a red dress, jumped up and raised her hand. Where is Dyer? Dyer also wants to be my brother's bride. No, you are too young, several women shouted in unison. But Sister Fanyan's breasts are not bigger than Dyer's. Dyer, Fanyan was embarrassed and angry. There are other sisters. Forget Meow Meow. She is made of steel like Dyer, but Sister Su Wen has big breasts, and there is concubine Cheng. A butterfly flew out of the castle amid the noise of several women and drifted towards a forest somewhere around the royal city. In the dense jungle where towering plants grow, gurgling streams flow along the mountain stream, and flying fish swim by, splashing water. On a slope somewhere in the jungle mountain stream, a black-haired young man lazily lay on the lawn, his hands on his abdomen, a black cat lying beside him, and a dark purple box less than the size of a palm hanging on his chest. The young man had a handsome face, wearing a black short-sleeved shirt, and his eyes were closed as if he was dozing. A butterfly quietly flew to the young man's hand, but did not wake him up. Master! Suddenly, a crisp and pleasant voice broke the tranquility in the valley. A light brown-haired animal-eared girl jumped out from the depths of the valley, holding some strange flowers and plants in her hands. Master, I found the fragrant grass. It will be delicious when I use it as a condiment for the whole animal feast. When the girl with animal ears came to the mountain stream, she saw the black-haired young man lying on the grass and dozing. Her face was immediately covered with black lines. She said indignantly, Master, you are lazy again. I will tell the master's wives when I go back. Meow. The black cat lying on the side stretched, opened his eyes and changed his posture. Hearing this, Muchu, who was lying on the lawn, slowly opened his eyes and smiled leisurely. You little girl, can't you enjoy the happiness of being a master? The little girl didn't buy it, and raised her head mischievously. I don't care. If you don't accompany me to find the herbs, I will go back and complain to the master's wives and let you not enter their room at night. Qi Xiaoxiao just finished speaking, but found that her master didn't react. Turning around, she found that Muchu was concentrating on looking up at the blue sky. A piece of debris the size of a fingernail fell from the cloudless sky, revealing the deep and endless void below. Immortality. Muchu lay on the lawn, stretched out his arm, and a delicate butterfly stood on his bony finger. A flash of blood flashed in his eyes, and a smile appeared at the corner of Muchu's mouth, and his tone was leisurely. Xiao Xiao, do you want to see other worlds? Other worlds? Qi Xiao Xiao was puzzled. Yes, just like this world, even more exciting than this world, the world. Muchu stretched out his arm, and the butterfly on his fingertips flew away, heading towards the deep and incomparable blue sky. The sign-in system of the world. In a trance, he suddenly recalled the many other selves who had devoted themselves to the 6 reincarnations in the white space created by the human world that day. The broken hair on his forehead fluttered in the wind, and the box of the monsters on his chest trembled slightly as if it had sensed something. A bright smile appeared on Muchu's face. After a while, take your wives to the world to experience the real, sign in and punch in. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 627. The book is finished. When I typed these words, I felt very complicated. I had mixed feelings. When I was halfway through writing the book, I imagined many ways to express my final remarks, but after I finished writing it, I didn't feel as excited as I imagined at the time. If it were free, not many people would read to the end. Laughs. Let me just say a few words. Flame Demon is the longest book I have ever written. It has more than 1 million words. As a clumsy and procrastinating person, it is not easy. I believe that there are, probably, old readers who have read to the end and found that the updates are getting slower and slower, even one chapter a week, which is simply too slow. Many people have given up the book because of this. In addition to my busy life during this period, I did find that the book has reached a bottleneck. It is not a problem to drag the original outline to 1,000 chapters, but I found that the plot is getting more and more cliched, and the excitement is not exciting. There is no point in continuing to write, and it also goes against my original intention. I might as well finish it quickly. I have written 2 books with more than 100,000 words before, but they died halfway because no one read them. But I still want to persist in writing a novel that everyone is looking forward to, because I am also a novel fan, and I like the feeling of waiting for updates in front of my phone. The process of writing a book is painful and obsessive. The feeling of sitting at the table scratching my head and thinking about the plot makes me addicted. I should not be the only author like this. I like this feeling very much and look forward to it continuing. The book Flame Demon is finished like this, but this is just one of the series I want to create. I hope to write different types of novels around a core, and I hope that my original intention can persist and let me continue to write more articles. In short, congratulations on the completion. The next step is the promotion of the new book. The new book has actually been written for a while, and after some revisions, it has finally reached the initial expectations. The genre is not quite the same as this book, but it is in the same series as Flame Demon, and it can be regarded as a sequel to Flame Demon. The characters in Flame Demon will also appear in the new book, and I am looking forward to the meeting of the 2 protagonists. Without further ado, let's take a look at the introduction first. Urban plus superpower plus sister control plus system plus cool article plus anime elements. 8 years ago, a mysterious virus called magic energy broke out with Neon as the center. Humans infected by magic energy not only had some physical changes, but also had extreme psychological distortions, turning into puppets controlled by desire. People call this kind of infected person who is like a demon when the disease breaks out, Demon Man. A sudden accident awakened Yayu, who had the eye of reincarnation, and obtained the treasure left by the demon world in the human world, the box of the ghost. He was selected as the new generation of the Lord of the Demon World, and his mission was to inject magic energy into the box of the ghost, open the door of the barrier connecting the human and demon worlds, lead the alien race to invade the human world, and rule the human race. By chance, Yayu discovered that his sister, who lived under the same roof with him, had a natural ability to restrain magic energy, and was also selected as the savior to save the world. Congratulations to the host for embarking on the path of cultivating the Demon Lord. Main quest: open the gate of the enchantment, lead the Night Clan to rule over humans, and seize the origin of the world. If successful, you can ascend to the position of the Demon Lord, and the punishment for failure is to be wiped out by the evil spirits living in the box of the monsters. In order to save his life, Yayu had to hide his true identity in front of his sister who became the savior, while secretly hunting demons to obtain new magic power. www. Money, life, power, lust, there are always endless desires hidden in the hearts of humans, and these desires drive them to give birth to the evil desires of greed, plunder, and killing. In everyone's heart, there is a trapped beast called desire. The new book has been published simultaneously on Tomato, and students who are short of books can go and have a look. Also, don't forget to attach the number of our small group at the end. You can search on Little Penguin. Bell 1 3 9 6 2 1. Only a genius like the author can understand the complex 9-digit password. I hope everyone will join the big family of Zion U. Let us meet again.